Welcome, everyone. We're going to be starting the service in just a few moments for Richard Lippis. If you have a cell phone, we just ask if you could please put the cell phone either on the vibrate mode or just turn the phone off. And right now, the rabbi is going to be doing an ancient ritual of Kriya, going back thousands of years with the family. Thank you.
A voice says, "Cry out." And I say, "What shall I cry? All flesh is grass, and all its beauty is like the flower of the field. The grass withers, the flower fades when a wind of the eternal blows upon it. Surely the people are grass. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our God shall endure forever." Death has taken our beloved Richard James Lippis, our friend, father, husband, brother, grampy, cousin, community member, leader from us. And our friends, they grieve in their darkened world. In their silence, there's lamentation. In their tears, there's loneliness. Lost in their sorrow, we pray for them to find the presence of loving friends Hear them, O God, and be with them for Richard's love that united us in life and which death cannot sever, for his companionship that we shared along life's path and which continues through the tenderness of memory, for the gifts of his heart and mind that brought joy and happiness, purpose and discernment, is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give our thanks to God. In times of grief, we open our hearts, our minds, our ears to the voices of our sacred scriptures. They bring us the ever-new message of God's nearness. They tell us of our kinship with the Creator in light as in darkness, in joy as in sorrow, in life as in death. Psalm 1. Ashrei ha'ish asher lo halach ba'atzat reshaim, u'v'derech chataim lo amad. Happy are those who have not followed the counsel of the wicked, or taken the path of sinners, or joined the company of the insolent. Rather, the teaching of God is their delight, and they study that teaching day and night. They are like a tree planted beside streams of water that yields its fruit in season, whose foliage never fades, and whose fruit always flourishes. May my portion be among you. You meek of the world, you speechless of soul, who embroidered your lives in secret, retiring in word and deed. Hidden dreamers, small of speech, but great in glory. Lords of the Spirit, and you knew it not. Artists of exquisite silence. Priests of the stillness of God, you met unchanged all that befell you. Great things and mean, justice and wrong alike. Softly as if on tiptoe did you pass along the paths of life, your hearts awake, your ears attentive, your eyes ever watchful, and as you passed along, you scattered around you without intent, scarcely knowing what you did, the seeds of faithfulness and purity. You had no place in the ranks of the prophets, no place in the ornate chambers. Solitary, your footsteps died away, leaving no echo, no trace. But your life, that was your prophecy. And your very being was your glory. You are the faithful guardians of the image of God in the world, and as God lives, not a flutter of your eyelids shall be lost, nor the slightest motion of your spirit ever perish. Till the final generation, when the last song of the mighty psalmist is ended, and the name and lore of ancient sages be utterly forgotten, these still shall live, revealed anew in the light that gleams in the eyes and shines on the human face. I'd like to welcome Cantor Susan Lewis-Friedman.
Psalm 23 depicts Adonai ro'i lo echsar. Adonai is our shepherd. As Richard was an environmental lawyer, the work of a lawyer is to shepherd their clients to the right paths, not to push, not to shove, not to insert their will, but rather to just gently guide in these right paths. And it is fitting that as Richard is laid to rest in the paths of righteousness, in these green pastures, as we chant the words of this psalm, we're going to read the words of the psalm together first, and then I will chant them. And I would like to invite you, as we get to this path, this green pastures section, just to reflect on Richard and all the wonders that he was, and all the wonderful things that he was to each and every one of you. As we say the words, "The Lord is my shepherd," which can be found in your pamphlet on the last page. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Who maketh me to lie down in green pastures, who leadeth me beside the still waters, who restoreth my soul, who leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for thy name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Adonai roi, lo echsar, lo echsar, bine ut deshe, yarbitzeini, yarbitzeini, al mei mnuchot yenach aleini, nafshi shovev, yancheini v'magle tzedek, lemon shemu. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Gam ki elech begeitz al mavet, lo irara, ki adai madi. Shivtecha umishandecha, heima yenachamuni, ta'aroch lefanai shulchan, neged surerai, tishanta b'Hashem roshi, kozir v'yar v'ya. Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti beveit Adonai le'orech yamim.
There's an incredible detail that we read in our cycle of studying the Torah this week that discusses the Aron Habrit, the Ark of the Covenant. And there in that text, as it's describing this sacred object, it shares the detail that the Aron Habrit, the Ark, was made out of acacia wood and then covered in gold inside and out. The rabbis ask, why take such a precious substance, gold, and waste it on the inside when it's a box? It's closed. You don't see the inside. What's the point? And their answer is that we should always seek to see that that which is inside matches that which is outside. As I've gotten to know Richard through you, I've learned about how he lived a principled life, about how he sought to be equal, shaveh, in every instance. As much as I can represent that here, it's more powerful and a greater privilege to be able to hear your words, his children's words, reflecting on and sharing that life that they knew of their father. And so I call first upon Amity to come and share some thoughts in this moment for her father's funeral.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Can I move this a little closer? Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you. Take a deep breath. I'm going to try to keep this short. I'm a storyteller by trade. For those of you who are in my profession, that's what we do. We tell stories. That's how we connect people to our lives and to the moment, to our missions, to one another. So I want to tell you about my dad by telling you stories about him. And I'm going to tell you 3 short stories, and I promise they'll be really short, and they'll be really entertaining. And if you know my dad, they'll be fun. And each one will reflect a different part of who he was: funny, loving, devoted, and deeply rooted in the place that we call home, Buffalo. So the first story I'm going to tell you, and my mom tells this story a lot, but I'm going to tell you my version that I've heard over the years, is how my mom and dad met, or as the kids call it, their meet cute. So my mom, and don't fact check me, because I'm not entirely sure I have all the details correct. I wasn't born yet. So my mom and dad met at a lecture at Rosary Hall College, right, Mom? What? Rosalie? Rosemary. Okay. So my mom was a college student at the time, and my father, I believe he was already a lawyer. And my mom was attending this lecture series, and she wanted to continue going to this lecture series, but she was a poor college student, and she couldn't really afford to keep going, so she decided she would sign up as a docent so that she could go for free, right? So she put her name and her details, her contact details, and this was in the 60s, on a sign-up sheet so that she could sign up and continue to work at these lectures. She'd become a docent. My father saw her and thought, hey, there's a cute girl, and went over, looked at the sheet, took her details, which apparently at the time, we would find that creepy now, right, in 2020, but back then in the 60s, this was okay to do, and took her name, took her number, and called her up the next day and said, hey, I saw you at the lecture. I thought you were cute. You want to go out for tea? And my mom said, sure, let's do it. And he took her to the Albright Knox, and they went out and had tea together. Now, later in life, my mom told me she only went out with him because he had a car. However, she leaves that part of the story out when she tells the story. Now, I'm going to keep going. So, my father showed up in a suit and tie, looking very dapper. And he said to my mother, I'm wearing a suit and tie, but I don't normally dress this formally. It's a Jewish holiday, and I'm meeting my family later for a fancy dinner. And my mom very casually said, of course, I know, I'm Jewish. So they went and they continued having their tea. They had their very nice date. They got along. My dad charmed her, as he normally does. And my dad went back home, went to dinner with his family, and he said, I just met the cutest Jewish girl. And my Nana and Papa said, marry her. The rest is history. So that's story number 1. So I hope I did it justice. The next story is going to show you how devoted my dad is to his children. After 9/11, I was living and working in Manhattan, and I was having kind of a hard time. I was really terrified of traveling, and so be it. My job was getting on a plane and traveling to different cities and hosting different events in these different cities. And every week I would have to go to Cleveland or Pittsburgh or just all over the East Coast. And I was paralyzed with fear. I didn't really know what I was going to do. Just the idea of going to different cities was actually making me just physically sick. It was pretty hard. I was stuck. And I was talking to my parents about it. And I didn't know. I didn't know how I would even keep my job. And my father, he dropped everything to help me. And without hesitation, he said, I'm going to meet you in each location. And I flew there from Manhattan, and he drove from Buffalo, and he would meet me in each city, in Cleveland or Pittsburgh or wherever I would be. And he met me there, and he stayed with me. And I did my work, and I hosted my events, and he just was there to comfort me and make sure I wasn't alone, because he knew how afraid I was, and he made sure I got through that time in my life. And it was one of the most loving things anyone's ever done for me. And that's just who my dad was. And that's story number 2. And story number 3 just happened a couple of months ago, and I didn't really tell a lot of people about this story because I kind of kept it a secret. But for those of you who know, my father was staying at a rehab facility in Lancaster called Greenfields. And I wasn't very familiar with the village or the town of Lancaster, but I started to get more familiar with the area, driving out there every day to visit my dad. And there's a beautiful historic district in Lancaster, which I wasn't aware of. And there's a really lovely E.B. Green building right on Broadway, a couple miles from Greenfields. And I noticed it, and I would drive by it every day, and I told my dad about it, and I told him how much I wanted to show it to him. It's actually, I think it's called the Brost Building. For those, I know there's some people here who would be interested and probably know of it. And, you know, knowing my father, he probably knew exactly what building I was talking about, but he pretended not to know, and he said, oh yeah, I'd love to see it. But he was in rehab, and he barely left the facility. The only time he would leave was to go to a doctor's appointment or go to, really just to go to a doctor's appointment. So the next time he was leaving Greenfield, he had to go to the emergency room. And it wasn't a bad emergency room visit. It was, the doctors were insisting he go to the emergency room. He felt fine. We weren't rushing or anything, and we were in the car, and we were almost to Millard Fillmore Suburban, about 5 minutes away. And if you know, it's like a 20-minute drive from Lancaster to Williamsville. And my dad looked at me and he said, oh wait, I want to go see that building. And I said, Dad, you want to take a field trip? And he said, yeah, let's go see it. And I said, but we already passed it. It's 15 minutes in the other direction. And he said, so? I feel fine, let's go. And I said, I don't think your doctors would like that. And he said, come on, I'm never going to get another chance to see it. Let's go see it. So we turned around, we drove back into Lancaster, 15 minutes back into the other direction. And we parked in front of the building on Broadway, and we just sat there for about 5 minutes. And we looked at this beautiful E.B. Green building at 5490 Broadway, and I said, here it is. And he said, you're really starting to get an eye for these things. And if you know, I've kind of, his love of preservation has kind of, he's given that to me, and his love of architecture and his love of old buildings, that's been a gift that he's given to me. And when we sat there in that moment, I really felt that connection with my dad, just so deeply. And I'm so glad that we had that moment together to sort of admire that building and that place. And I see beauty in Buffalo the way my father saw beauty in this city, everywhere. And he gave me that gift, and I'm so thankful for it. And we made it to the hospital, and no harm, no foul. We still waited 5 hours before we saw a doctor. So our little detour, we kept it a secret. I think we only told my brothers, maybe. Now you all know. It really wasn't a problem. And I really wouldn't change that trip for anything. So Dad, your love for the city, its streets, its buildings, its history was so immense. And your love for your family, especially for your children and your grandchildren, that was unparalleled. Your love for your wife, my mom, was one of a kind and full of admiration. You set an amazing example. And I don't know how I'm going to go on without you in my world. And I don't know how I'm going to watch Bills games without closed captions. Because we watched the entire season together, silent with closed captions on. So go Bills. Thanks, Dad.
Amity, I pray you keep telling those stories and more for the rest of your days as we welcome your middle brother, Josh, to come up and share his own reflections.
Thank you again for being here today. For those of you who might not know me, I'm Joshua. I'm Richard's eldest son. When we met with Rabbi Gutmann on Monday, Amity announced that she was the best public speaker. After I said I was not, which she misheard and said, I'm the best public speaker. So I admittedly am not the best public speaker, and I've never given a eulogy before, so I hope you'll all bear with me. When I decided to speak today, I did what most people do. I Googled how to give a eulogy. I learned I was supposed to discuss my father's life, talk about his personality and values, and share some stories and explain what he meant to me in 5 to 8 minutes. So let me tell you a little bit about my father. For the past 20 years, I had the unique privilege of working with him. Professionally, he dedicated his life to the pursuit of justice, the environment, historic preservation, and community service. He was a brilliant legal mind who practiced law for 56 years. He worked on landmark cases that gained national attention, but he never made a big deal of that. He wasn't in it for the recognition. He pursued cases to help people, or simply because he believed it was the right thing to do. As you already know, he loved Buffalo and fought to preserve its history and architecture. He left a mark on this city in ways that most people will never realize. I wish I could stand up here and tell you all of the historical buildings that he saved. Maybe Amity could do that. But the truth is, my father did not speak much about the buildings he saved. He spoke about the ones he couldn't save. He spoke about the buildings we lost, because to him, they were examples of why preservation was so vital to protecting our heritage. I imagine there are some lawyers here today, but let me share a little secret with the non-lawyers. Law school doesn't teach you how to practice law. It just doesn't. My father did that for me, and he did it for countless others as a teacher, an employer, and as a mentor. Somewhat recently, my sister asked me if I could handle a case that needed an emergency order to stop a building from being demolished. I called one of my father's friends and colleagues, a very seasoned preservation lawyer, to see how he would approach this complicated case. I was looking for advice. He simply laughed and said, I'd look at what your dad did in a similar case and copy it. That's what I always do. They say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And I think many lawyers will continue to learn from, copy, and follow my father's work for many years to come. My dad liked to joke that he never wanted to have children. He said it to us over and over again. He said he only wanted to have puppies. While it's true he certainly loved animals, the truth is he was a great father who dedicated his life to his children. When we were very little, he would often take Amity or I on special one-on-one outings to the Science Museum or the History Museum or the zoo, and he would call it an Amity Day or a Joshie Day. I can't express to you how much we love these days, even when he read every sign to us at a museum, or he wouldn't let us get anything from the gift shop. Now that I'm a parent, I have been for a while, I suspect the reality may be that my mother needed a break from one of us. But to us, these trips are cherished memories. Amity recently reminded me that many of our family vacations involved seeing historical sites. We saw more historical homes like Mount Vernon and Monticello before we were teenagers than most you'll ever see in your life. And I'm sure we did not make those trips easy. I cannot imagine how difficult it was to drag 3 children along the Freedom Trail in Boston while we sat there saying, "I'm hungry, I'm thirsty," the entire time. But by taking us on these trips, he instilled in us a love of history, architecture, and preservation that we all share. Throughout my life, I never had to question my father's love or support. He always listened, cared, and showed up when it mattered. Now that I see Amanda telling Hannah to be quiet and to stop talking and to sit still, it reminds me of all the times we all sat in these pews and my mother was trying to do the same thing and my father was resting his eyes. So Hannah, sit still. My father taught me how to be a good father myself, to put family first and always be there. In his final chapter, my dad taught me one last lesson on how to face illness with grace. Sorry. Even as his body began to fail him, he never complained. He didn't grow bitter or angry. He spent his last 8 months surrounding himself with his family, talking with us, sharing memories, and making us laugh. In that time, he gave me a model, not just for how to live, but how to leave this world with love and courage. Dad, I will always miss your sarcastic sense of humor, your wisdom, your unwavering sense of purpose, your moral compass, and your advice. But most of all, I'll just miss talking with you. I know I recently told you, when I realized the end was near, that I wanted to make sure you knew that you were a good father, and how much everything you did for all of us meant so much to me. What I didn't tell you is how much you shaped who I am, and that your legacy will live on in us and all the people whose lives you touched. I love you. Thank you.
Josh, I think you can dismiss any lack of confidence about your aptitude as a public speaker. More of us are watering in the eyes now and laughing, and that's actually one of the obligations of a Jewish funeral, that it's not a funeral unless there's tears and laughter. So thank you for that. Kevin, you want to come and share your thoughts?
I want to thank first everybody for coming. I, like normal, forgot to bring my piece of paper that I wrote down all my thoughts on, so it's going to be a little bit more shooting from the hip, unfortunately. In his last couple days, I got to be able to see Dad by myself and I asked him, "How do you want to be remembered?" And he told me, "At my funeral, I don't want to see people crying. I want to see people laughing. I want you to celebrate who I was, my humor, my love for the city of Buffalo, my love for all the people here, for the connections that exist." Dad truly cared about everyone in this city. He wanted everyone to know how special this place was. I'm sorry. From saving the commercial slip downtown, to the Richardson buildings, to just everything, saving the arts. He tried to help keep things going. He had tickets to every theater and art institute that he could find in this area. Sorry, my thoughts are starting to fail me. I apologize. Dad, I love you. You're an amazing father. You are the reason why I care about other people, why I care about the city, why I care about the arts. I'm sorry that there are going to be people that don't get to know you, know your legacy. I had more to say. I can't think. I apologize.
Kevin, no apology necessary. Thank you for sharing. And I know we'll be gathered together a little bit later today if you find your notes and want to share them. It's a deep mystery to be human. We live, and yet so much of why we live, how we live, is mysterious. We're constantly groping for understanding, as though in the dark we search, we ponder, but are availed no certain answers, only a realization that the days of our life are limited, that much of our world is beyond our control, and that all life in actuality is a presentation of choices of what to do with the time we have. Our choices are infinite, but their effect can be distilled into two outcomes. Either we choose to use our time in this world to bring light and life, or we leave the world without the gifts that we could contribute. Josh, you shared so eloquently about your father's career, his many decades of work on behalf of what was good. And you said a little bit more when we met on Monday, that his principled choice was always to be on the side of the righteous in whatever work he did. In this sense, as multifaceted and complex as the dynamics that Richard encountered through his work, he managed to see through this complexity to a simple binary: choose the path of goodness. Much of Richard's life was defined by his activity in the legal profession. For a time, he practiced with his brother Gerald. And Gerald, we know that you are with us in this moment in Florida, and that you would be here if you could. We wish you so much comfort in the loss of your dear brother. There was no hardship that could diminish Richard's determination to do good. As was shared even during his months-long struggle with final illness, he was determined to get back on his feet. He had clients he needed to call. He had casework he needed to finish. 16th century Jewish mysticism relates the story of the world's creation to a kind of brokenness. The story, as told by the sage Rabbi Isaac Luria, goes something like this. An unabating stream of light, a creative force, flowed into the world, filling it. But the light was so powerful that the divine vessel meant to contain that light failed. It exploded. It shattered into thousands and thousands, into millions of shards. Given this legend, it would be possible to interpret our world as fundamentally broken. But that was not the point of Rabbi Luria's story at all. Rather, he believed that the import of this story was that as Jews, we are not to see the world as broken, but rather to see the world through the opportunity to repair it. And I'd like to think that Richard saw the world much in the same way. Our life circumstances are never a curse, but rather a challenge and an opportunity calling to us about how we can respond. Richard was profoundly committed to Jewish peoplehood, and the activity of his intellect and the focus of his actions both speak to this commitment. It's a minor note considering the numerous boards and organizations he served on throughout his life, yet during the 1970s and 80s, Richard served on the board of the American Jewish Committee, an organization committed to global advocacy focusing on promoting religious and civil rights for Jews and non-Jews, on combating anti-Semitism, advocating for Israel, and defending democratic values. And ultimately, he served as the chairman of the AJC from 1986 to 88. The core mission of the AJC revolves around a principle that Richard embraced. It's the idea that all human beings are created in the image of God. And his commitment, first and foremost, through all his work, was to humanity. This commitment drew Richard during his early career to work as a public defender for organizations such as the ACLU, advocating for vulnerable minorities as part of the civil rights movement. Throughout the core of his career, his environmental work took up causes of victims of pollution and disaster. His strong sense of identity forged his way through countless organizations such as Lovejoy Elderly and Youth, the Buffalo Urban Waterfront Planning Committee, various citizens committees, the Olmsted Parks Conservatory, Buffalo Waterkeepers, and the Sierra Club, where he spent 50 years. It's mentioned that Richard, he would show up to meetings always wearing his coat and tie, even when he was seated with the more free-spirited members of the Sierra Club. His clear motivation throughout was doing good for other people, and never about recognition, never seeking accolades. Even his focus on historical preservation work sought to preserve the history, the architecture, and identity of the communities he loved, especially the city of Buffalo. Sharon, the famous story of how Richard and you met, shared just a bit ago, revolves around a date in one of those historic places, the Albright Knox. And what emerged from that was a partnership of 55 years. He loved you deeply, and you love him too. You didn't know much about his work, you shared, because it wasn't important for your relationship. He didn't discuss it often, although, sure, when the perks came and you could travel together on business, it was an exciting opportunity for both of you to bond. Eventually, you settled in your historic Tudor home that you still occupy in Pomeroy Park. For Richard especially, this was his dream house. He loved admiring the details of its architecture, from the use of glass to the Mercer tile floors. He treated his home like one of his preservation projects, actually, that he pursued around town. He maintained its character always throughout. Well, sure, perhaps he needed to update the TV from time to time to be able to watch his favorite movies. He also enjoyed music, listening to classical, jazz, show tunes. He was a season ticket holder to theaters, as you shared. Richard, through all of his loves, he was deeply real. And that realness of his personality was drenched in charisma. He focused on connecting with the people that he loved through the things they loved, trying to be useful, trying always to offer guidance. You shared that it was not uncommon to find gardeners and tradesmen of all sorts who would barter their work with him when they couldn't afford the legal counsel. But most of all the people in his world, his family meant the world to him. Amity, Josh, and Kevin, you testified to the deep influence that your father played in each of your lives. As children, he invested greatly in sharing his love of presidential history with you. He influenced each of you to pursue your careers, whether technology or fundraising or working alongside him as partner and taking the reins of the practice that he built. Amity, it bears mentioning how you especially devoted yourself to him in these months of illness, that you took time away from pursuing work to care for your dad, and that kindness is one that gives you credit eternally in this world, just as he did for you on so many occasions. He loved all of you so deeply, and I know his memory will always occupy a place of blessing for you. Whether we find ourselves thriving in one moment or in a challenge the next, we can remember the way that Richard lived, to actively seek the opportunity and the significance of every moment. It was noted that he battled heart disease and overcame it 30 years ago after overcoming an operation, and those decades were some of his best. He never lost his zeal for living as one could feel his affection regardless of how sarcastic his humor might be. At the same time, he possessed a certain wit and charm that made him immensely likable, that earned him a vast circle of lifelong friends. So many of you are with us here today. What else about him? He loved candy, good and plenty, and Swedish fish, and of course he was famous for his love of chocolate on chocolate on chocolate. Elise, I was told that your favorite memory of your grampy was visiting Yotality and picking out toppings to make the perfect sundae. I hope you think of him every time that you do so from now for the rest of your life. He delighted in his grandchildren. They were the absolute reward of raising good kids, of raising a solid family, of being able to live his life always making choices for goodness and the betterment of our world. Richard will be missed most by those who loved him best. First and foremost, his family. Sharon, Amity, Ryan, Josh, Amanda, Kevin, Elise, Hannah, Ava, and Gerald, his many cousins, the whole Lippis gang. May his memory be a blessing to all of you, to all Israel, and to all our world. I ask for you to please rise as we recite the memorial prayer, El Malei Rachamim.
הרחמים שוכן במרומים, המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה. אם קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת יקירה שלח לעולמו. בעל הרחמים יסתירהו בסתק רפאיו לעולמים, ויצרור ביצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר אמן.
Eternal, full of mercy, who dwells on high, find fitting rest upon the wings of the divine presence, the Shekhinah, in the heights of the holy and pure, who shine like the glow of the firmament, for the soul of Richard Lippis, son of Thomas and Ruth, who is gone to his eternal home. For we pray in memory of his soul, may his resting place be in the Garden of Eden. Therefore, may the Master of mercy shelter him in the shelter of God's wings forever, and may God bind his soul in the bond of life. The eternal is his inheritance, and may he rest peacefully upon his resting place. And let us say, Amen.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. This will conclude the sanctuary portion of our service today. We'll now be going in procession to Forest Lawn Cemetery. Anyone going in procession with us, please use your bright lights and your four-way flashers. You may want to bring your programs with you. They have the Mourner's Kaddish prayer in them, which we'll recite at the cemetery. The Shiva information is also here at the bottom. It's 6 to 9 p.m. tonight at Amity's residence. The address is listed. And right now, I'll just have everyone remain standing in your seats, and we'll call just the pallbearers up while we bring the casket out of the sanctuary. And then once the family has followed behind, everyone else can proceed directly to their vehicles. Thank you.
البارحة جيت عازم أهل زوجتي على السمك. مرقة سمك.
مرقة سمك؟
البغداد ما ماكلين.
أنا سامع بيها متو أهل البصرة كل شيء سمك عندكم.
سوينا مرقة سمك. سمك شوي وسمك قلي.
بالعافية.
شلون ما تاكلون الربيان؟
لا ليش؟ مو لهالدرجة، احنا ناكل سمك سقف، بس مو مثلكم انتم عندكم متطرقات للسمك أكثر من عندنا. يعني مثلا مرقة السمك هاي أنا بس سامع بيها ما مجرب.
يلا اليوم خلي المرة تسوي مرقة السمك
طيب لا مو طيب.
شلون مو طيب؟
شلون تسوي يعني مو السمك مو في هذا
لا انا اقول لك شلون. الحشوه مالت المرق تصير بالاول عباره عن خضره شبنك وكزبره وبصل وبصله وثوم وفلفل وبهارات. هذول شنو ينحمسن بالكيلو، وبعدين تنذب عليهم شنو؟ تنذب عليهم المعجون وما معجون والصلصه هاي. زين؟ النوبه تتسبك تكون السمك شنو؟ متقلب استقلال زين؟ وينحط وياها. زين؟ ينحط وياها يكون فوق هي الماي هذا. النوبه شنو؟ تكون بالفرن. تدخل بالفرن على قرب الفرن هيك مثل ما نص ساعه. بس السمك يصير سمك هو وصل، يعني تشيل وصلة السمك تحطها والمرقه شيل وتحط على الدنه. يعني مو يصير عظام مطشر، لا لا.
يعني
اي بس شنو الطعم يصير؟ يعني هو حسب نوع السمك. زين. والله البارحة